On October 2, 2001, pilots in mid-flight received an instruction almost no aviator has ever heard. Land now. Not because of weather, not because of a threat. Because the airline had literally run out of money while its planes were still in the air. Every Swissair aircraft in the sky was grounded simultaneously. The most admired airline in the world had ceased to exist. Mid-flight. To understand how shocking that day was, you have to understand what Swissair had been. For most of the 20th century, it wasn't just an airline, it was a symbol. Swiss precision, Swiss neutrality, Swiss permanence. Travelers ranked it alongside the finest carriers on Earth. Its balance sheet was so consistently strong that financial analysts quietly called it the flying bank. It seemed immune to the turbulence that destroyed its rivals. That reputation was earned over decades of genuine operational discipline. While American carriers lurched through deregulation in the 1980s and European rivals burned cash on price wars, Swissair stayed profitable by staying focused. It flew premium routes, controlled costs with almost obsessive care, and built a loyal business travel base that competitors envied. It even pioneered the concept of a dedicated business class cabin, a product innovation the entire industry eventually copied. But by the mid-1990s, that discipline was quietly fraying. A new management team arrived carrying a new idea. The logic went like this. Swiss domestic routes were small, the home market was tiny, and if Swissair wanted to grow into a true global player, it needed a network. It needed partners. And since it couldn't merge with a major European carrier, those were politically protected, it would buy minority stakes in struggling airlines around the world and turn them around. The strategy had a name, the Hunter strategy, and on paper it was persuasive. Swissair would acquire stakes in undervalued carriers in Africa, Belgium, France, and Eastern Europe, inject management expertise, fill seats with connecting passengers, and extract profit. The board approved it. The analysts approved it. The press called it visionary. What nobody fully interrogated was whether a mid-sized Swiss airline had the operational capacity or the cash reserves to actually rescue a collection of failing airlines simultaneously. The acquisitions came fast. Swissair took stakes in Sabena of Belgium, Air Littoral in France, LOT Polish Airlines, South African Airways, and several others. Each deal was structured to keep Swissair just below the threshold that would require full consolidation onto its balance sheet. A structuring choice that meant the true scale of the liabilities being absorbed was never fully visible to outside investors, or arguably, to the board itself. The problem was that these airlines were struggling for structural reasons Swissair could not fix. Sabena alone would consume hundreds of millions. Route networks overlapped awkwardly. Labor agreements in each country were different and expensive. And Swissair's management, however talented at running a precise Swiss operation, was being stretched across a dozen time zones and a dozen regulatory environments at once. The synergies that justified the strategy kept failing to materialize. Then came September 11, 2001. The attacks didn't cause Swissair's collapse. The structure was already cracking, but they removed any remaining margin. Transatlantic bookings fell off a cliff in the weeks that followed. Insurance costs surged overnight. And Swissair, unlike better capitalized rivals, had no buffer left. It had spent its reserves acquiring stakes in airlines that were now also in free fall. The cash was simply gone. Swiss banks, which might have extended emergency credit to almost any other institution carrying the national flag, declined. The Swiss government moved slowly, weighing a bailout against public appetite for spending billions on a private company's strategic mistakes. Behind the scenes, frantic calls went out to other European carriers and to sovereign funds. None of them moved fast enough. On the morning of October 2nd, the accounts were empty. The images from that day remain striking. Passengers stranded at gates, ground crews walking off the job because they had not been paid. Fuel suppliers refusing to service aircraft because invoices were outstanding. An airline that had operated with clockwork regularity for 7 decades simply stopped. Some passengers were trapped abroad for days. A carrier that had prided itself on never letting a customer down had, at the most basic level, let everyone down at once. The final liabilities, once everything was unwound, reached approximately $10 billion, a number that still staggers when you set it against the airline's size. A new carrier, Swiss International Airlines, was eventually assembled from the wreckage and later absorbed by Lufthansa. The Swissair name and the brand equity it had taken half a century to build was retired permanently. The thesis behind Swissair's collapse is deceptively simple. The Hunter strategy failed not because the idea of network expansion was wrong, but because the execution required capabilities and capital that Swissair never honestly assessed whether it possessed. The off-balance sheet structuring masked the true exposure. The board approved growth that looked like strategy and turned out to be leverage. And when the external shock arrived, as external shocks always do, there was nothing left to absorb it. The flying bank had spent every franc it had on banks that couldn't fly.